Good morning and welcome to PACT's Talent Connect program, COVID and Place Disruption. I first want to thank our sponsors, Cigniti, Bentley, Boomi, and SEI for their support of PACT and the Talent Connect programming. As you know, our talent efforts cover a variety of different topics, and this morning is certainly going to be a very relevant one for you and your efforts within your organizations. I want to first start off and talk to you just about the format. All attendees are muted. If you haven't used Remo before, it's a terrific platform that we're really loving. We're going to have two 30-minute panel discussions, and we're going to run till about 9:45. We'll finish up with another round of about 15 minutes of networking. While we're in the panels, again, you'll be on mute. Nobody will be able to see you. Your camera will be off, but you can participate with the Q&A as well as with the chat function. If you have questions, please use Q&A, and our panelists and moderators will take those questions again during their sessions. You can move around again once we're back into networking. You can move around from table to table. Again, just utilize Remo as if you're in a room looking to chat with different people. We will close automatically at 10 a.m. Without further ado, let me introduce our first panel, or more specifically, our first panel moderator. Deborah Diamond, certainly not a stranger to the world of talent, has done absolutely incredible things with our region as president of Campus Philly. She announced recently she's going to be stepping down. We're sad to hear that, but she has left that organization and certainly our region in good hands with the impact that Campus Philly has had on student retention. So with that, let me turn it over to Deborah. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for inviting me. I'm going to be moderating a panel discussion on trends in talent in the age of COVID. And I want to invite Nicole and Nancy now to turn their cameras on and ask them to introduce themselves.
Great. I'll start. I am Nicole Delvardo. I'm with Drexel University as the Associate Director of Career Services. Just as a bit of background for those of you less familiar with Drexel University, we have about 24,000 students that are enrolled, and we're based in the Philadelphia area. Drexel's really known most for the cooperative education program, as we have students that integrate classroom experience with typically 18 months of 6-month separate co-op work experiences where they're gaining hands-on work experience during that time. And our career services team facilitates the engagement between employers with events like information sessions, virtual career fairs these days, recruiting, and connecting them with our students for all recruiting needs, whether it's for co-op or full-time hires, part-time, or temporary. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Nicole. Nancy, you want to introduce yourself? Your mic is off. Great.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me this morning. My name is Nancy Adams, and I am the Chief People Officer at Centrak. Centrak is a healthcare IT company. We provide location services primarily for hospitals throughout the world, really. We are a global organization, and location services is a service that's really necessary, especially right now during the time of COVID. When you think about location services, we provide a number of services around locating assets within hospitals. We also provide, when you think about senior centers and caring for dementia patients, being able to track individuals from maybe leaving facilities, and those types of things. So our technology is very far-reaching, and I'm very happy to be here and very glad to be able to have this discussion this morning.
Great, thank you. And again, I'm Deborah Diamond. I'm the president of Campus Philly. We're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to keep talent in Greater Philadelphia keep college town in Greater Philadelphia so that our region grows and companies like Centrak thrive. Students at Drexel fall in love with Philadelphia and stay. So we're really pleased to be part of this conversation around trends in talent. I know that for students who are in college and about to graduate or graduated last spring, there's a fair amount of anxiety around what's going to happen with the how they're going to be able to use their degree on the job market, what's changing. So I want to start by asking about that overall trend. And this is such a unique economic event, right? So unlike other economic crises that we've been in because of its cause and hopefully short-term nature. One thing we're hearing is that this is kind of going to be a K-shaped recovery, right? So that people with college degrees, people who are, in white-collar professional jobs are going to find employment if they're really quickly. And that job market is going to recover. And that those without college degrees, there's going to be, more of a challenge. I just want to hear from your perspectives, both at Drexel and then in hiring. And Nancy, maybe you can talk about hiring for different roles, right? And how how the epidemic has impacted what the job market's going to look like for those with college degrees and what we need to think about maybe for those who don't have college degrees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I can certainly, start and take this one. I think that, the current situation is unique in how uneven the economic impact has been really across sectors. I would say, more than ever, an employee or even a business owner's financial situation depends, predominantly on the business sector they're in. Like most workers in the retail and hospitality sectors are hurting, but then the delivery and cleaning industries are busier than ever. Bars are closed, but liquor store sales are booming. It's a distinct change from the past when, recoveries relied on more like broad economic factors like the unemployment rate and GDP, and then different sectors would move up or down like in lockstep, right? So I would say, as far as hiring needs is, I think that, we're finding that, within Centrak, we've had, across the gamut, right? We have folks who, we've hired who have or high school diploma. So installation technicians, the work that we do, we do some installation within hospitals, that are technical type jobs, basically, utilizing, your typical, screwing things into, the walls and, installation type things. And then we also have to hire electrical engineers to develop new technologies, and come up with the latest, greatest, next thing that's going to come out and from a technology perspective, right? So, so we're doing both, right? We're hiring developers and we're hiring folks who are, installation, installation techs as well. So I think, that's it from a hiring perspective, we're doing both. Yeah. I would say also though that I think sales has been hit pretty hard within our team, within our organization. We've definitely scaled back on our sales folks because in the hospital world, we do, especially with COVID in the first 3 months, of this hit, right? We saw all the hospitals shut down, and because they wanted to deal with the crisis, right? Elective surgery stopped. The only thing that people were focusing on were let's just deal with the crisis at hand, which was emergency. Just deal with people coming in who were sick with COVID. So there was no we're going to work on projects, right? There was no, we're going to, meet with vendors,
Right,
like, oh, sell me your wares. Like, that's not happening.
I think the point about the uneven nature of the sectors, and sales is one of those, is really interesting. And Nicole, when you talk about what things are looking like for recent graduates, maybe if you can speak to that, how maybe the job market is stronger with the same major, but if you want to go into this industry, it's stronger than if you want to go into that. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So as we've been working with our graduating students in particular, what we found interestingly is that for our June grads, the exit survey information of how many students were employed was almost identical to the year before. And we had expected bigger changes, right? Because of COVID-19, expecting that employers might pause or rescind offers that they had previously made. But that wasn't the case in June. And so by and large, students with degrees, as you were saying, were faring better. And so what we learned in working with our employer partners was that to your point, Deborah, is that even if there were sectors that were sort of having an impact, it was sort of a microcosm effect. And so there were other areas where their needs were growing significantly. And so what we found is that employers were hosting virtual information sessions in extraordinary numbers because of a desire to recruit, show their presence to our students, have visibility so that their talent pipelines would be secure. And so we've seen that through the fall, that the virtual information sessions by employers are robust. Now, in terms of advising our graduating students, there's such a variety. Some students are looking at the economy and are feeling a level of concern, and others really just continue to focus on their dream and feel completely, in some ways, like oblivious to that these circumstances might have an impact on their goals. I will say, as we've spoken with employers, as we've spoken with alums, as we've spoken with economists, the main advice is not only do we guide our students towards achieving their dreams, but also thinking about that first step after graduation, not as the be all end all, right? We know that's not going to be the job that they stay in forever. And so looking for opportunities that may be adjacent, that may be similar, where they can develop skills, where they can grow, that really is just a way of putting less pressure upon themselves when the economy is uncertain.
Yeah, interesting. One thing that this has opened up for all of us is the opportunity to work remote and talent mobility. And so I'm wondering if each of you could address, Nancy, whether this has changed your national recruiting strategy. Maybe if you're looking for a specific role now, you go straight to a city where you know there's a lot of that talent as opposed to focusing on our region exclusively, like what's changed there. And Nicole, for students, has this made them want to stay closer to home maybe? Or are they thinking like, oh, well, I can live here and work elsewhere? How has this mixed things up? And how long term do you think that kind of change is going to be? Nancy, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say for us, I love this is kind of a big plus that happened as a result, I think, of COVID is, it really busted the remote working myths that, some companies were still hanging on to out there. And I just had this conversation yesterday with one of our recruiters, and the conversation was, we want the best talent, and that's not no offense if anybody's from Indiana, but I'm like, it's not going to be for a software developer, it's probably not going to be in Indiana. So please look elsewhere for this particular talent. And and that happens to be where one of our offices was headquartered, and it doesn't need to be there anymore. Right. So it was, that was the conversation, and let's go where the talent is, and, let's find it. And, there's no barriers anymore, right? There's no reason for the person to be, they're going to be working remote anyway, right? Or working out of their homes, right? They're going to be trained remote, so there's no barrier.
And so, how has that changed what you actually do? Does it mean like, you know what, let's post this on, let's focus this in Austin, this ad on LinkedIn, or like, how is it actually translated in practice?
Yeah. So for like specifically for that role, we were looking in a specific town, in a specific area, where we knew that Ruby on Rails was hot, right? Yeah. So same with our electrical engineers. There's a huge right out in the Washington DC area is a huge electrical engineering hub. You're going to have to pay for the talent as well, right? So it's going to be different. You're going to have to, pay a different dollar amount than maybe you would, right, if you're getting that talent in, a rural area or something like that. So you're gonna, the cost of your market rate's going to increase, those types of things. So all of that you're going to have to take into consideration. But if depends on what you're going for, right? Are you trying to what you're trying to create as a business? So you have to take all those things into consideration.
And then is this let's start remote because of now and eventually we'll expect you to move to our location, or is this long-term remote?
Yeah, so for our organization, probably the first 3 months of COVID, we were like, this is probably temporary. This probably isn't going to be forever. We have definitely come to the decision that, this is working. There's no reason to go back. And it gives us a lot of flexibility. We have to change the way that we train our managers and our leaders to communicate. Yeah. There's other factors that go into it, right? And how we communicate with our employees, how we manage and lead, to be very clear in our communications, to be more robust, to create context for employees. Obviously onboarding, there's a whole lot of things that come with it that, we have to adapt and adjust as an organization as well. Right. But we talked about, what are we going to do with our locations? Do we turn them into a training center? Do we turn them into like a conference meeting space, since we have leases for the next, 3 years or whatever, like where people come in and they meet, we talk, we have, quarterly meetings and context setting sessions and strategic planning, those types of things.
Right. Nicole, so how are students thinking differently about location, and do you notice that they're looking at opportunities in other cities that they wouldn't have just because of virtual recruiting or working remotely?
Yeah, so I would address that in 2 ways. So one is, as you know, Drexel is so founded in cooperative education. And so our students going through their undergraduate degree had to adapt to working remotely, just as we all did. And so as we all were encountering Zoom fatigue, as we all were learning those new ways of taking initiative with managers, whether it was text or Slack or Teams, IM chat, our students were actually learning how to do that better as well. And so in some ways, given that this is going to be part of the future world of work, to Nancy's point, a lot of companies are, looking at longer term, how this can offer some cost savings. And our students are even more prepared for that. They've been working for Pico and Lockheed Martin from their bedrooms, just like we have. And so that's one piece of the puzzle. In terms of our graduating students and how they've adapted their goals and interests, in terms of where they want to be, it is such a mixed response. There are students that are considering graduate school and as sort of an alternative to going right into the workforce, as a means of just a sort of a plan B, if they can, to develop further skills, further educational training, if the economy is uncertain as they're graduating in June. So that's a consideration. And we do definitely hear, especially for our recent grads, this question and desire, especially if they've moved to New York City, if they've moved to other locations where they experienced what it's like to be in a pandemic far from loved ones. They're considering moving back. And so that's what we're hearing more so is from that recent grad population. And I think for our seniors, it is, for the most part, looking for opportunities that will be nearby, especially those that had international goals. That's sort of been thrown into a lot of questions, and those especially have been adjusted.
I want to ask a question that I think actually has also come up a bit in the chat around where applications are coming from for employers, where recruiting is taking place. Nicole, how employers are recruiting virtually on campus. What has, obviously people aren't meeting in person for recruiting and job posting, but what do you think of as like the couple most significant changes in how recruiting has changed, and which of those changes do you think is going to stick? And I'm thinking, we talked regionally, that's one thing, but also, tools that people are using, things like that. Nicole, do you want to start with how recruiting has changed?
Yeah, I'm glad to start. So what we've noticed is that, I mentioned earlier, the virtual information sessions, that being such an easy way for employers to access students without necessarily traveling, without necessarily organizing different time zones and the cost and expense of hotels, those kinds of things. We found that they're successful, especially when employers organize those in an interactive way, including alumni, sometimes even, showing their facilities. We've had employers do such creative things, and I definitely think that virtual information sessions will continue because the ease of access, before really the bubble was broken, students were more reluctant to participate in virtual events, but I think that it has changed completely. And I think that students will participate virtually even after this passes. And so I think that's definitely going to continue. In terms of virtual career fairs for recruiting, I think they will have a place even when all of this passes, for niche industries to bring together specific student groups as well as specific employers so that they can connect when otherwise things like cost and convenience might have been a burden for either group. So I definitely think we'll see those pieces continue.
Yeah, I just put a plug in from what Campus Philly has experienced this semester. We've run 2 recruiting events virtually, and then conversations, employer-student conversations. We've seen the numbers larger than what we did in in-person events. And we've also seen at our last event, the University of Maryland had the most students of any school at the event. So we're drawing from, and we had a lot, the national reach of who was coming to that event for jobs in the Philly region was just obviously so much larger than if we did in person. So all these unique opportunities that have opened up because of this that we'll continue to retain. Nancy, do you want to answer this? And then I have a couple questions about pay that have come up. So I want to get in that question too.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say that I think the virtual events are awesome. Our Centrak has a parent company. It's called Hama. It's actually based in the UK, and they have a called a Hama Future Leader Program, and so they go out to colleges throughout the country, and they invite recent college graduates, both undergraduate and graduate, to participate in what's called a Future Leader Program, where we have about 50 operating companies that are under HAMA, and they're all different in different sectors, you know, like medical sector, safety sector, but we all have some kind of intellectual property specific. And so what they do is they put these recent graduates into a rotation for 6 months post graduation into for four rotations for 6 months each, and then into these operating companies, and they get to choose, right, and pitch like which operating companies they want. So this is something that, you know, they've been doing for quite some time, for probably about 10, 12 years. And so with these events, they've been, you know, obviously doing them a lot more virtually for the last 8 months or so. But the candidate pool has gotten larger, right, because they're able to reach more people, get more participation doing this virtually. So I do believe that this is probably going to stick. It's going to be, you know, something that we continues for the future. Again, one of those positive outcomes of, you know, the COVID of, you know, of what we're going through, because I think more people can participate. It's less costly, you know, like Nicole mentioned, you know, you can put together these videos as an employer, showcasing, you know, your culture, showcasing, you know, the inside of your organization, how things work, you know, interviews with your employees, you know, all this stuff to give people a better idea than just meeting with someone in a booth in a career fair, right, and just getting a glimpse of one person. So I do think that this is a wonderful way to give somebody more exposure as a you know, a graduating student to an employer.
And you know, as we've talked about remote and the increase and the disconnection between where you work and where you live, what is happening to pay? So do you see companies saying this is the salary, and if you want to live on this in Indiana, then go ahead. If you want to live in New York City, or are you seeing no matter where the job is, pay is specific to where the worker is working? How is that going? And are there sort of industry best practices or trends about either around fairness or effectiveness in pay and recruiting right now?
So based on my experience, it's compensation is still based on, you know, market rate. You know, and I think until the cost of living in California is the same as the cost of living in Pennsylvania, I think we're going to struggle to be able to have, you know, kind of more of a nationalized pay rate. You know, I think we're going to need more of a nationalized rate of living before we can have a nationalized pay rate, right? So, you know, I think one's got to follow the other, you know, if we're going to go down that road. But, you know, and then that's kind of how why we're in this boat to begin with. You know, we're trying to, the difference is because, you know, it's difficult to live in certain areas unless you're making a certain amount, right? And that's, so I think that the one has to follow the other. You know, but that would be my 2 cents on that.
Nicole, I just got the 2-minute warning. So if you want to answer this question, then maybe we'll do one really short answer from each of you.
Yeah, and my response to that would be brief. We've spoken with employers. We just had the Drexel University corporate sponsor, GoPuff, share that their salary offers and offer negotiation, there hasn't been any change, even though they are, you know, recruiting from a broader pool. And so as we are advising our graduating students, we're following what we're hearing from employers to focus on the market rate and have those conversations.
Yeah. If you could each say one silver lining, we all need them, one silver lining from this time that you think will make a difference in the future when it comes to talent in our region. Nicole, you go first.
Great. What a powerful, great question. I would say, I don't know that this is specific to our region, but I think one of the silver linings of this has been that the barriers of formality in the workplace really have been broken.
Mhm.
People are seeing one another's homes, they're seeing one another's families, circumstances, and really going through challenging times together. And because of that, I think authenticity has been just even more valued, being a person as well as a professional. No longer are those so separated. But I think that will continue. I think that that's a true silver lining. And as that relates to our region, I think in part, because of the pandemic, that's also brought up other issues of how can universities and how can employers recruit and retain diverse talent. And I think that will be, again, a silver lining that continues moving forward. How can we be real people? How can we have real conversations, whether it's about diversity in the workplace or who we are in all ways?
That's great. Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, not to cop out here, but I do think that, Nicole definitely hit it on the head there. But I think we really brought, humanity back to the workplace, which is really important. There's been so many, I think, benefits, and I know it probably sounds odd, seeing all the silver linings that have happened as a result of COVID, but, some people might say I'm an optimist. Others might say I'm very sarcastic. So all depends on who you talk to. But, the fact that people can now, I've had many employees move closer to family, now that we have a remote and distributed workforce, right, wherever that is.
Yeah.
And, if they've taken this opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to go closer to my family, wherever that is, move to Georgia, move to wherever, right? I'm going to, take advantage of the time, even with homeschooling, as much as parents hate it and doing it, right? The flexibility of understanding today people's lifestyles and saying, like, listen, I'm taking the shift from 8 to 10 with my kids,
Right.
My wife's going to take it from 10 to noon, right? And then, we're bringing somebody in for the afternoon, right? Or whatever it is, like, everybody's working together through this pandemic. And, it's just bringing people so much closer together and understanding all of our humanity and the things that we need to do to work together, and, from employer and employee and, community.
It's the meaning of the Chief People Officer title.
Yeah, right. And I've seen so much good in us, right, as people.
Well, thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm getting the wrap-up signal, and Danielle's going to tell me what to do from here on. I think I'm going to turn off my camera so we can pass it off to Bruce. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. I'm Bruce Marable, CEO of Employee Cycle. We're a people dashboard helping HR and people leaders become smarter and more data-driven in their function. And I'm very happy to be here and honored to be your moderator for our panel today. So thank you so much for being here. You could be in any virtual room in the world right now because we're all remote, but you decided to be here. So we're all very grateful. So today we're going to discuss how to manage employee engagement and company culture in a remote workforce. And I have two awesome panelists that are going to really help us have a fun, informative, and relevant discussion today. So first, I'm going to introduce Ann Hook. Ann is the COO and managing partner for Solomon Edwards, a professional services firm. In her next phase of life, she wants to train seeing eye dogs, which sounds awesome. Also, our next panelist is Brad Sukala. Brad is a systems thinker with a background in UX design and consulting. He leads the design department at Think Company, and he also likes dogs. So thank you so much for both being here, and we both appreciate your passion for dogs. So just a reminder for everyone listening, please put all your questions in the Q&A. We'll try to get to those at the end. So to start this off with a little bit of fun very quickly, I just want to ask both of you, starting with you, Anne, are you a tea drinker or a coffee drinker? And if so, where do you like to get that from?
At home, I'm a tea drinker.
Okay, Brad, tea or coffee? And where do you get it from?
Coffee for sure, and I have a fancy coffee subscription that comes to my mailbox every Tuesday.
Fancy pants, Brad. All right.
Fancy coffee.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump right into the topic. So today we're discussing how to manage employee engagement and company culture in a remote workforce. So I want to level set so that we make sure that we're talking about the same things here. So Anne, can you help us understand, in your own words, what is employee engagement and what is company culture and how do they differ?
That's a big question, Bruce. So let me try to tackle it. Starting with employee engagement, which I think is so important right now. So the way I will look at it, when you've succeeded, is when you have employees that feel connected to the company and its colleagues. Secondly, understands the business strategy or the business outcome that a company wants to get to, both on an individual level, so for themselves, what's in it for me, the function they work in, and at a company level. And then the last piece, of course, is to be passionate around executing on the daily tasks to achieve that business outcome. And that is when I believe we get the health for the employees, well-being and productive team members, which is on the individual level, and on the company level, we get higher profits. So that's how I think about employee engagement. But it's a lot of the softer sides, the human side from an employee perspective, and motivating people. So when you say manage, I think it's leading there. And then it's the harder part of it, and that is it really comes down to dollars on the bottom line. Company culture. So I would look at that as the common set of values and beliefs that we have that exemplifies who the company is. And I think we have a really interesting dynamic going on right now because it is all changing. We just heard from the previous panelist on how we are becoming more authentic, more human to each other. We see each other's homes. And I'll just stick on that just for a second. There are times when you look at how people dress working from home. They used to be in suits and tie in the office. And now we're lucky if we get a t-shirt that is clean, right? And sometimes we see the bed behind them and you think, could you not at least make your bed? But this is happening in real time. But it's changing the culture. It's changing the way we show up, which is part of the culture too. So I may have sounded a little negative when I pick on that, but it's happening in front of our eyes. But we have such a unique opportunity right now to take charge of this culture and help guide it on the path that we would like for the company to head, where it will take its own path, and God knows where we're going to end up then. So that was my maybe a little lengthy answer on both of those.
No, all good, and thanks for that, Anne. All right, Brad, how do you define employee engagement, and then how do you define company culture?
Yeah, I think Anne said so many good things. I have to find something else in there, but yeah, I think engagement really is about how employees are coming to work every day and how they're thinking about the work at hand, and and being sort of that in that active mode of thinking, and really bringing their full selves to that, and not just sort of executing and turning a crank. And that, for us as a consultancy, that's like critically important because everybody has some client-facing capacity, and so being engaged and providing value, direct value to that client is a key part of what we do every day. On the culture side of things, I think those are all sort of enablers of that engagement, if that makes sense. That like having that strong and supportive culture within the organization can help to give people the space to be engaged and the energy to be engaged in their work. And I think this will be an interesting time. And as you were sort of alluding to around culture, because there's always been sort of a false culture that can be created when you have a physical space, when you have an office or a studio to go to. And you could see that in like the .com era of like foosball tables and beanbag chairs. Like that's not really culture, but like it was sort of masquerading as that. And you could still see some of that today. I think now that that's all been stripped away and we are all working, from our bedrooms or our spare rooms or whatever it is, culture is really how the company relates to each other and the outside world, and the frameworks with which they, make decisions and sort of evaluate the problems that they're faced with. And I think that's real culture there. And you're going to start to see, who has a strong culture and who has foosball tables.
Awesome. And for the audience to understand your perspective, let's provide some context from both of your organizations. So Brad, what is your current headcount today? And pre-COVID, was everyone in the office? And if so, what does that look like today? Partly in office, hybrid, fully remote, what are you doing?
Sure. We're right around 100 folks. Maybe it's 99, maybe it's 102, it's somewhere in that range. And pre-COVID, BC, before COVID, we were all we had 3 studios kind of around Philadelphia and the environs. We had a small space in Denver, and then we had some folks that were working on site with clients. And I would say that 90% of people were in an office or a studio every day. We have a very our approach is very flexible about people working from home if you need to, but we like the default to be in the studio, and then you just work from home for a day or two if you need to, or if the kid's sick or whatever. Now it's the exact opposite, right? Where I would say 99.9% of people are at home. And even the people who were working on site with clients all day, every day, they're still not back either. We have some skeleton IT staff that go into the studio now and then to make sure things are up and running, but that's about it at this point.
All right, and same question for you. What is your current headcount at your organization? Pre-COVID, was everybody working in the office? And now, I can't even say post-COVID, but during COVID, what does it look like? Fully remote, hybrid, what are you doing?
Yeah. So around 800 employees, and I would say 99% were in our offices or in clients' offices. That has been our company culture. Obviously, that is changing fairly rapidly. So we turned in about a week, I started getting really concerned when I thought, what is going to be the financial impact if all our consultants working with clients all of a sudden cannot be productive? Both from they're not going to be able to support our clients, but secondly, our clients are not going to pay us. So how do we figure this out? So we were a little ahead, I think, just making sure all technology worked. So people love it in general. There is a group that would like to go back to the office because they get energy from being around people in an office environment. And I feel a little sorry for them because I think that's going to be a long time before we see that. And I'm hearing more and more people saying, "Anne, I don't ever want to go back to the office. This is working really good for me." So I think this is going to be a challenge we have, both from a culture perspective, but I think it's also a real big opportunity. If I can just expand a little bit on that question, is that okay, Bruce?
Yeah, sure.
So working from home, we've level set the tables. If we look at who got promotions in the past, it was usually the people that were seen in the office, not the people that choose to live somewhere else and work remotely. They choose sort of a different, I'm talking in general terms, right? More of a quality of life and other things, and may have given up a little bit on the career aspirations. And statistics show that is also the way it played out. Now, we all have the same size square on a Zoom call. We're seen as much. And working remotely, I think many companies that we work with, I see taking on and driving towards a culture of, if you want to become a leader, step up and take charge of your own career here, and you can be a leader. So I think there's so many opportunities for people to actually come through in a different way and show up in a different way because we are remotely. So just a little perspective on I'm incredibly optimistic on where we're heading, and I think it's accelerating in a pace that we've never ever seen before.
So speaking of that pace of acceleration that we've never seen before, let's really dig into this topic to really understand what's going on. People are really stressed the hell out, more so than they ever have at work, at home, social life, personal life. You got a global health pandemic. You got all types of high profile social injustice. You have a highly debated presidential election. People are staying in the house. People are going through holidays and trying to figure out should they travel or not travel and see their family. The best way I can put it is people are stressed the hell out. Then they have to go to work and actually do work, which most people are stressed out about work because studies have shown that most people aren't even engaged at work pre-COVID, let alone during COVID. So when it comes to employers and HR leaders and people in talent, how should they really think about trying to engage employees knowing that they're super stressed, they're super anxious, they have all these things going on, and the last thing that they need is a stressful work environment? So what should talent leaders, CEOs, employers, anyone who's in a position to actually make a change be thinking about as they're trying to reduce the stress and anxiety of their workforce during 2020 and beyond? We can start with you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, who?
Oh, Anne. And we can start with you, Anne.
Okay. Love that question. Because it's so important. And I think it comes back to employee engagement, because that is one of the tools that we can help our team members taking away some of the negatives that this environment also is causing, right? Because we have to, even if I say I'm very optimistic, I'm also very concerned about some of the impacts that you just listed. So a couple of different things. When people don't know what's happening, they get concerned and anxious. So communication and meeting people in where they are today. So different kind of communication than we've had before. Adding training around anxiety and stress. It's not for everyone, but I think it's also being able to talk about it, for leaders to talk about the fact that they are also stressed out. They're also concerned about loved ones that they cannot see. So I think it's an opportunity to communicate in a different way, be compassionate in a different way, but also provide some of the tools to help all of us. And even if now it's coming up to the surface, I think a lot of these things existed before too, but now we can talk about it. So it's almost like it's on the table for a topic that is, it's okay to say you're stressed. Before, I don't know what kind of weakling you are to be stressed. It had a connotation of a negative. Now it's just a reality. So I think we have the opportunity to really address it now in a better way. Leadership, I think, is also coming through in a different way right now. I say exceptional leaders are exceptional leaders, whatever happens. Great leaders, I think, now are good leaders. Good leaders are shitty leaders. So we have to do something around leadership and give and equip our leaders to provide for their employees in a way that they are engaged, that they are productive team members. Then we get to the whole topic of productivity. There's some research that show that on average, employees work more than 3 hours more now than they did before per day. That sounds a little high to me, but I do think people put in a lot of extra time. And it's very hard to know when you're working and when you're not working. It sort of blends all together, right? But research also shows that productivity is probably going down. There's a pretty good Stanford economist, Bloom, that is saying he believes 5 to 10% of productivity will go down. And I think because of some of the factors you talked about, Bruce. So if we continue to measure how people are doing based on the hours they put in, instead of the outcome they're producing, I think we add more stress again. People feel like I have to show that I'm working. It's about the show up and I'm online. Do you see my light is green? And it's stressing the heck out of people. versus if we're starting to measure it on outcome, then you can feel really satisfied. I did what I said I was going to do, and you tick it off more than an hour's perspective. So those are some of the different things that I think we can do to help our employees in the situation we're in.
Thanks. Brad, how should we do stressed out employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting time and an interesting opportunity because, Bruce, a lot of the things that you alluded to that are stressing people out outside of work, I think are things that are very unknown and in some cases unknowable or foreign to us and feeling, a lot of the stress of all those scenarios comes from this feeling of a lack of control. And the one thing that I've been trying to stress, and I think presents a real opportunity for us in the workplace, is to flip it around and to turn the workplace into a place of like stress reduction. Because if we're providing, as Ann said, we're providing the appropriate information to people, and we're being open with them about what's happening in the organization, and we're also providing them the tools and the information that they need to get their jobs done, they then have this area of extreme control, in which they have a lot of agency to get their work done in the appropriate way. They have a lot more control over how they do that since they're at home all the time now. And as long as they feel like they are empowered with the tools and the information that they need to do that work, I think that can turn work into a real place of solace and sort of insulation from a lot of the uncertainty that's going on in the rest of the world. So for me, this time has been very interesting in that it started out as, in March and April of figuring out, well, okay, how are we going to adjust to working remotely? And especially in a highly collaborative organization where we also need to spend a lot of time with our clients and work with them directly. How are we going to do that remotely? That was about tools and technology a little bit, but then what it started to lead us down the path to realize was that a lot of those things that are good practices around remote or distributed work are actually good practices for any kind of work. And it's a lot about, so we do a lot of work with designing with accessibility in mind. And the thing you always say about accessibility is that it's better for everybody. If you create an accessible design, it creates a better experience for people that are fully abled or don't have low vision or have both hands or whatever it is, right? It's better for everybody. And I think that's what we're seeing now about work practices that we're all sort of forced into this distributed model. And it's causing us anyway as an organization to put more practices into place that are going to be beneficial after this, even if, which I don't think is going to happen, even if we all went back to the studio again and pretended this never happened, the changes that we're implementing this year are going to make that a better scenario. So I think that's the type of stuff that we can think about is, how do we enable people to do their jobs better and to provide them a sense of control over what they spend doing, 40 plus hours a week.
So question for you, Brad. Ann just mentioned that a lot of people are trying to prove that they're working by having their Slack or their Zoom light on or doing some type of superficial thing to show, hey, I'm working, maybe even pushing the keys in Slack just so it seems like they're typing even when they're not working, because they believe or they've been conditioned that if their work is not being seen, then they actually are not doing the work. So because employee engagement has totally changed with remote work, and as a people dashboard company, as Employee Cycle, we're constantly working with a lot of HR leaders with their metrics, and one of those are surveys. And so we know that surveys only tell part of the story in regards to engagement. So when you look at doing a bunch of surveys and other things where you're trying to track what employee engagement metrics sound or look like, but then also on the other side, not trying to continue to overly stress the employee and making sure that they always have to have their chat on, what does engagement look like? Because 6 months ago, it looked like throwing pet parades and throwing virtual happy hours, and this is how you make a martini. and we're going to dress up and have costume parties and virtual dances and all this other stuff. So now that people have gotten used to that, and I think pretty tired of that, what does engagement look like today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I see the same thing, by the way, of like the virtual happy hours are very sad right now. There's not a lot of attendance there, which makes sense. I get that. I mean, I think the engagement is really about getting to the level where, you know, whether it's a manager on a team or a person who is maybe for us, you know, leading a specific client engagement, but the people that have day-to-day visibility and are working with the folks on their team on a regular basis, getting them to a point where they have the skills and the abilities to really like evaluate what people's engagement level is. And, you know, are they seeing, I mean, it's about like manager training to a degree, right? Are they seeing people that are, you know, participating in conversations when we have a group session, or, you know, weighing in? We do a lot of asynchronous work in documents and things like that. Are they weighing in with comments, or are they just sort of like accepting the document and not really providing any feedback on it? But it's about like how in this new asynchronous and synchronous world are they demonstrating that level of engagement around the work? Like I don't think it can be about, you know, the bonus things of the pet parades and the virtual happy hours and things like that. Those are nice, but they're not going to drive engagement. So I think it is about giving people work that's meaningful to them, recognizing when there are signs of a drop off, and then, you know, having the abilities with those people, those managers, people managers, those design leads, or whoever it is, to then step in and say like, hey, you know, with a casual conversation, it seems like maybe you're not like totally bought into what we're doing here or engaged in it. Like what's going on? What can I help you with? There are other questions that I can answer. But really like making it most meaningful about the work.
Thanks for that. And I'll ask you the same question, but I'll also try to combine this question that I see in the Q&A, which is not only what are you seeing in regards to effective ways to keep people engaged and identify low engagement, but also have you seen a difference in performance and engagement between men and women, especially as, and I'm assuming this question is going in the direction of women are mostly caretakers for the most part. And so when it comes to women or caretakers in general with school-age children and looking at engagement, they need flexible work environments and schedules, because if you have a kid at home and then doing school and they're doing Zoom school and you're doing Zoom work and all of that and all the craziness that comes with that, what have you seen with that? And is there anything that your company is doing to address that?
So I'll start with the last question. Quick answer is no. Do not see a difference in performance. And I see the same with our clients. And I think part of that is that, and we talked about it a little bit in the previous panel too, we are so aware as leaders that our employees need some special consideration. What was not okay before, like the example, I'm having the kid duty between 8 and 10. You couldn't tell your boss, like, yeah, so I'll show up at 10 because I do some kid stuff in the morning, you know, the school thing and all of that. It was just not okay. But now it's totally okay. It's more, of course, you're going to take care of your kids. I mean, let's get our priorities straight, right? So I think people are so, both leaders and employees, everyone in the workspace understand this and want to do their part. So I think if anything, we're killing people having to do all these different duties through the day. So do not see that. I do think, as I mentioned before, I think we'll see productivity dip if we don't do something a little different. When it comes to the engagement, I think we've matured. So we started out, as we already talked about, the happy hours. We needed to see each other. That was sort of the burning need that we had to fill at that point. So we got together on different Zoom calls and we did different fun things. Well, now I think we've evolved after 9 months that now we need to feel connected with what is actually the business doing. I'm seeing all my colleagues in Zoom calls and all of them. I don't need to drink a beer with them anymore. I want to know what the business is doing. So 2/3 of all companies are changing their business strategy, not to become irrelevant, getting to that blockbuster moment, right? That none of us want to get to. So it's such a prime opportunity where maybe we have been more in line of having top leadership making the decisions on the strategy and somewhat involving the rest of the team. Now we really have an opportunity to align power on the top, knowledge at the bottom. How about we really truly leverage the knowledge base in our companies to be part of developing the new strategic roadmap? When people are engaged, when they feel like I have an opportunity to impact, I can contribute in a bigger way, and I see how I can do that, I think productivity go up and their involvement and engagement goes up. I know it works for me. I think it works for most people. So again, such a great opportunity to not totally move away from the social part, because I think we need to do that too, but to really get into the business part and how do we engage maybe in a bigger way than we've done before, around the people that truly know what's going on and have their input on where the business is heading. And then you feel connected.
So I'm getting our notification that we need to wrap up. So I'm going to ask you both the very last question. If you can just give a 30-second summary of this, that would be awesome. Starting with you, Anne. Last 30 seconds, what could anyone listening to this do to make sure that they are maintaining and hopefully increasing employee engagement and maintaining their culture during this pandemic and doing remote work?
Listen, listen, and listen, and truly listen. Understand your employees. Everyone is in different places, and adjust your leadership to those people. Maybe even implement a listening program, because I don't think we're really, really good at that yet. It's another opportunity we have ahead of us.
Awesome. Thank you. Brad, last 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think along those lines as well, is to recognize that we have a lot of different channels available to us now to interact with people on our teams. And so leverage all of those in your listening that Anne was suggesting, and that some people are going to do well with just a Slack chat and you're checking in with them, and other people are going to appreciate, a small group Zoom session or whatever it is. But make sure that you've got sort of a way to make sure you're reaching out to everybody on your team, and not just the people that are, open to it, but make sure everyone knows you're thinking about them and make it easy for them to have that communication with you.
Nice. Thank you so much for being awesome guest and panelist on this panel. Everyone listening, thank you so much for taking your time out this morning to listen to us. PACT, appreciate you having all of us, and please stay healthy and safe. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce.
Bruce and Brad, thank you so much. We're going to move now back into networking for about 10, 15 minutes and look forward to joining you at a table there.
Sounds good.